However, I do agree with the critics of the Room 237 documentary that around 70 to 80% of the theories presented in it weren't intended by Kubrick. But the one theory in Room 237 that has been taken seriously by several critics, such as David Hagley of Slate magazine, is the idea that Kubrick encoded a hidden theme in The Shining regarding the repressed history of Native American genocide by European settlers. Number 1, The Shining movie is hugely different to King's novel, and one key difference is that Ullman mentions Indian burial grounds.
The site is supposed to be located on an Indian burial ground, and I believe they actually had to repel a few Indian attacks as they were building it.
This detail wasn't in King's novel. And during the drive to the hotel, Jack talks to his son about a party of settlers who got snowbound one winter in the mountains and resorted to cannibalism.
What was the donut party?
They were a party of settlers in covered wagon times. They got snowbound one winter in the mountains. They had to resort to cannibalism in order to stay alive.
It's an obvious parallel in that the Torrance family will soon be snowbound themselves in the mountains like settlers. Number 2, in various parts of the hotel, pictures of Native Americans are hanging on the walls. The one outside Ullman's office is called Great Mother and was painted by Native American artist Norval Morrisseau. Another Morrisseau painting called Flock of Loons is also seen in Ullman's office and reappears near one of the hotel exits later. Here, an Indian chief image is conspicuously hidden under the stairs of the Colorado Lounge. To put all this into context, consider that in the made-for-TV remake of The Shining, which near enough strictly follows Stephen King's novel, there are no paintings of Native Americans in the Overlook Hotel sets. Number 3, much of the Overlook Hotel interior is based upon design features at the Ahwahnee Hotel in California, and Ullman specifically confirms that many of the designs are taken from Native American sources.
Are all these Indian designs authentic?
Yeah, I believe they're based mainly on Navajo and Apache motifs.
Number 4, Wendy Carlos, who produced some of the score for The Shining, told biographer Vincent LoBruto, quote, "There were great gobs of scenes that never made it into the film. There was a whole strange and mystical scene in which Jack Nicholson discovers objects that have been arranged in his working space in the ballroom with arrows and things." End quote. Arrows? And the opening music by Wendy Carlos features chants and screams that sound much like something we might hear from Native Americans. And Kubrick selected some rather creepy tribal sounding music, which is heard when we see Halloran's dead body laying in a pool of blood on a floor pattern of Native American design. Number 5, as pointed out in the Room 237 documentary, in this shot of the chef character Dick Halloran, a black actor who has a sort of Indian chief look about him, the actor is framed with a tin of calumet right behind him, and on the tin is a prominent picture of an Indian whose head is positioned in parallel with Halloran's. I'll also add that there is only one murder in the movie, and the victim is Dick Halloran, though in the novel Halloran is not killed. And supporting this calumet metaphor, there are other instances of thematic props in the kitchen scenes. Stacks of ketchup tins and other red liquids pass prominently by the camera, likely a subliminal suggestion of blood. More calumet tins are seen behind Jack as he hears voices, just as Danny heard voices in the first instance.
No need to rub it in, Mr. Grady. I'll deal with that situation as soon as I get out of here.
Will you indeed, Mr. Torrance? I wonder.
How'd you like some ice cream, Doc?
And in the larger kitchen area, knives are seen pointing directly at Danny's head. It's all very Hitchcock. Number 6, there are two very specific pieces of dialogue in the Gold Room scenes that reference an underlying racism in the hotel. Jack talks of white man's burden, a Rudyard Kipling poem used as a justification for white rule.
You set 'em up and I'll knock 'em back, Lloyd, one by one. White man's burden, Lloyd, my man. White man's burden.
And there's Delbert Grady's blatantly racist description of Halloran as
a nigger cook.
Although this refers to the black character Dick Halloran, remember that Halloran seems to also be used symbolically to represent the Native Americans. Delbert's comments are also accompanied by background music, and the song is called It's All Forgotten Now by Ray Noble.
I saw your picture in the newspapers. You, chopped your wife and daughter up into little bits.
All forgotten now, as in America's history of Native American genocide? Number 7, Wendy herself also appears to symbolise a Native American being chased by murderous settler Jack Torrance. The novel describes her as a blonde, but Kubrick selected long-faced, straight, dark-haired Shelley Duvall for the role, and had her dressed somewhat like a Native American in several scenes. Number 9, the River of Blood scene wasn't in the novel, and it is left unexplained in the film, yet was symbolically important enough that it was used as the trailer for the movie. Now, I've argued before that the River of Blood represents the blood of the Native Americans near wiped off the earth by European settlers, and that the blood is emerging from an elevated design deliberately chosen because of its resemblance to a screaming face. Note the terrified eye floor dials, and the fact that at one point the shot is intercut with Danny's screaming face, just as Halloran's death is intercut with Danny's screaming face. And there's one description in King's novel which may have given Kubrick the seed of an idea for the screaming elevator face metaphor. At the very end of chapter 30, and just after Jack runs in fear from room 237, the novel states, quote, "He didn't take the elevator back down. It was too much like an open mouth, too much by half. He took the stairs." End quote. And Kubrick even dropped another fairly blatant hint about the River of Blood in his follow-up movie Full Metal Jacket. Here the lead character talks about wanting to commit genocide.
I wanted to meet interesting and stimulating people of an ancient culture and kill them.
And right behind him is a billboard advertisement for a Western movie playing on a cinema. We can see two Native Americans, one of whom is being lifted up and thrown by a white guy. And the movie that is playing, if we translate its title back from Vietnamese to English, is the John Wayne movie Red River.
Hey, start the cameras! This is Vietnam, the movie! Yeah, Joker can be John Wayne, I'll be a horse! B.H.G. Rock can be a rock! I'll be Aunt Margaret! Animal Mother can be a rabid buffalo! I'll be General Custer! Who'll be the Indians? Hey, we'll let the Gooks play the Indians!
Number 10, Jack throws a tennis ball at Native American figures shown in a sand painting design above the Colorado Lounge fireplace. Sand paintings are a type of artwork created by Native Americans, and this one has the figures holding hands and dressed in blue, just like the murdered twins, and like Danny and Wendy trying to find their way out of the maze. Wendy also gets chased around in a blue nightgown, and in the tricycle scene Danny is symbolically wearing blood red and blue, with a dress-shaped blue seat framed behind him, like a twin or sand painting figure on the run from a crazy axe-wielding Jack. Number 11, and lastly, it's a very well-established fact that Stanley Kubrick had a huge and ongoing interest in political and economic history. He made several movies about historical events, and he talked a lot about history in the rare interviews that he was willing to give. So there you have it. There's tons more going on in not just The Shining, but also in other Kubrick films like A Clockwork Orange, Eyes Wide Shut, and 2001: A Space Odyssey. If you want to know more, then check out my other videos and read the extensive Kubrick articles over at my website collativelearning.com.